Hi guys, thanks for tuning into the channel today. Great day to be out for a ride, and I thought I might just let you know today how I go about running in one of these new Classic 350s based on all the experience I've had running in the Classic 500. Some I ran into the book and some I just jumped on and took them for a ride and give them a workout right from the start. I'll tell you what I think is the best way to go about it, the good and the bad points on both. So if you sort of hold in, watch this right through, I'm sure you're going to get some good tips out of it. And while we're at it, speaking of tips, some people or a couple of the subs have mentioned they don't like the brake pedal on this new Classic 350 Reborn because it sits a little bit high. In all honesty, with 3,000 k's on the other bike, I've never complained about that brake pedal being any issue. It's no issue whatsoever. It's just something you don't even think about and it won't worry you whatsoever. More importantly, the toe shifter on the other side, like so, I don't go much on it at all, and I've already put a heel toe shifter on the other bike, and it's far better to ride than this bike here with just a straight out toe shifter. So if you wanted to sort of think about where you ought to channel your thoughts on what has to be done to a bike, right from scratch, go for a heel toe shifter on one of these if you can line one up. Don't worry about the brake pedal. So let's get on this bike now, take it for a run and discuss the running in process. Okay guys, here's a quick look at the odometer. It's showing 96 kilometres on the clock on the Marsh Grey. I'm idling at 1190 revs now. I usually run this now for 2 minutes before I get on the bike and ride it for the first time, just so that the oil can get in, circulate around the motor. Before we discuss the running end of this 350 Classic, we might discuss the 2-minute warm-up cycle plus the tacho. Now, something that you may not be aware of, that you know, you hear people get on there and say, oh, we'll do a 2-minute warm-up on the bike and then get out and go for a bit of a run. Well, here's what I found out when I was riding a Classic 500 on 3 occasions. I kicked the bike over, ran it for 2 minutes, then ran on a 28 kilometre loop. Out of that 28 kilometre loop, 25 kilometres was at 80 kilometres an hour, and there were 3 kilometres going through town. Now the ride itself took 20 minutes, 15 to 20 degrees Celsius temperature, and I give the bike a good bit of a run around on it and come back and did the oil change and filter. What I actually found after I'd been on the bike 20 minutes, done the 28 Ks, when I dumped the oil was a toss-up between cold and possibly slightly warm. It takes a long time from scratch for a bike to warm up, especially one of these, and you could do a fair bit of damage to a bike in those early stages if you got a bit slap happy and got out there and revved the guts out of it. Now number 2, what we're looking at is the tacho. It's a $20 eBay special, and that's more for a newcomer that buys one of these bikes and they don't know what the sweet spot is. So the run in sweet spot is roughly 3,000 revs. So if you've got a tacho, like I'm in second now, and I can look down, I've hit the 3, I can drop it back up into the gears, and I'm running along there now, 3,000 revs, 3 or a little bit more. That doesn't hurt it, as long as you're not out there lugging the crap out of it. That's one that does the damage, is when you get and you're riding it like you're shunting in a train. So that's one you want to avoid. The first 200 kilometres, I ride the bike all around town. Now, I limit the speed to anything up to 3rd or maybe 4th gear, depending on what it is, and I run no faster than 50 kilometres an hour. So that is for the first 200 kilometres, and by doing that, I'm not putting any strain on the bike. It's doing it easy, and I like the slower running process to do it. Now, if you go with this thing and work on this principle, I only run the bike 10 or 15 kilometres per cycle, then come home, let it totally cool down, and then I'll go out again. So this is everything from a 0 right up to 200 kilometres on the clock. So the idea is go out in that first 200, do 10 or 15 Ks, bring the bike back, park it, let it cool down, and then go out and take it out again. And that's the best idea if you want a really nice motor on one of these and with good power. And what I mean by good power in the top gear when you're riding along out along the road at 80 or 100, and then open the accelerator and you'll feel the bike take off. That's what I mean by good power. Not down low in it, good torque up in top gear, and that's what it gives it. And at 200 kilometre mark, I decide then I'm going to drop the oil, and sometimes I'll put in a new filter. That these new motors are pretty clean now, so just an oil drop's good enough. So I do an oil drop at 200, and after that I will take it from the 200 kilometre mark to the 500. I'll increase the speed then and run it up to 80 kilometres an hour. So once again, doing about 20 kilometre runs and giving it a complete heat cycle. So by the time I've hit 500 kilometres, I've probably heat cycled the motor maybe 15 or 20 times, but I have not exceeded 80 kilometres an hour. So when I get to the 500 mark, like I did for the Halcyon Grey, I give it an oil and filter change. And speaking of oil, the oil I use is Penrite HPR Gas 10 semi-synthetic. I find it's a really good oil. I've used it on all the C5s, the Interceptors, Himalayan, the lot. So I use that oil, no trouble whatsoever, and it's been in 20 bikes. And then I also adjust the tappets while I'm at it too. And in that period from 2 to 500, I actually take it out along the road and run it, like I said, up to 80 kilometres an hour. But what I don't do is take it anywhere near any steep hills. I stay away from the hills and just ride a flat running where there's no pressure on the motor. I'll take the bike from 500 to 800 kilometres. I'll run it up to around 80, 85, 90. And by the time I get to around 800 odd kilometres, then I'll run it from there, occasionally up to 100. So I've done that with the Halcyon Grey. It's worked well, and I'm doing exactly the same to this bike as what I did to that one. And like in those early stages when you're riding these around, you're only using the first 3 gears, maybe fourth, especially when you're around town at 50. But I do really think by doing this method of running in, it gives you a much stronger motor. Even though I've got 3,000 kilometres now in the Halcyon Grey, and like I said, it's a great runner, I still haven't flattened it or anything like that. I've had it up to 110 on the speedo, but I've gone no quicker than that, and on average I sit on 90 or 100 cruise when I'm out on the road. And it does that really nicely, and you know, it's a pleasure to ride. Now, if you ask me what other mods he reckons worth having, this bike doesn't ride as good as what the Halcyon Grey, but on the Halcyon Grey, I'm running Classic 500 rear shocks, and I think the Classic 500 rear shocks give this bike a better ride quality. So if you keep that in mind, if you've got one of these 350s, maybe worth your trouble to get onto a second-hand set of 500 shocks. See how that goes. The front disc brake isn't what you'd call really good. It's a bit spongy, but what you do find after you put up several hundred kilometres, they start to work better and better each time you go out. I mean, this one now is not spongy on this one, and it's got a bit of bite to it, but the Halcyon Grey has got really good bite. Now that's one good thing on the brake side. And another thing is the clutch. The clutch when you first get on these bikes is a bit snappy. Sort of grabs when you're applying it. Don't be concerned about that, because the more kilometres you put on the bike, the better the clutch is. It's as simple as that. So I think overall I've given you a good idea how I go about riding this bike in, or running the bike in I should say, and I think it's worth your trouble. Don't go out there and give it a hard life, because if you go out there and give it a hard life, or Pro Sports exhaust on it, ride it harder, you'll overheat the motor for sure. And it might not happen straight away, but you can take it from me, where I'd done 6 of them in, and you know, like, you're better off showing a bit more respect and enjoy the ride. Take your time. After it's run in, you can get out there and do whatever you want to after that. The best hint I can give you would be short rides. Don't overheat the motor. Do the heat cycle. And if you take that into account, I think you'll have a really good ride. And I really think they go really well in stock form too. There's no need to get out and put any sports exhaust on them because they don't run any, they may run a little bit better, but there's nothing wrong with the power they got on tap now. So I hope, guys, that this has helped you a bit. And I also hope that this clip comes out all right with the audio and I don't have to go out and ride it again. Thanks for tuning in, taking a look. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. And I'll catch up with you on the next clip.